Valerie Knox knew something was off the moment she spotted an access log stamped 3:27 a.m. from an IP address that didn't technically exist. Not in PhoenixTel's registry, not in the dev's sandbox, not even in the hidden test environments she'd built herself. It was like finding a single muddy boot print inside a sealed vault. Only this vault was cloud encrypted, and the boot print wore obfuscation like a designer coat. She blinked. Refreshed the screen. Still there. It wasn't loud. No red lights or breach alerts. It was worse, quiet surgical, the kind of anomaly only someone who'd babysat this system for 12 years would catch. While most of the Minneapolis office shuffled in, late clutching coffee and half-reading JIRA tickets, Valerie sat frozen, spine straight, like the code itself had whispered her name. Quick pause if you're listening and haven't subscribed yet, hit the button. This caffeine doesn't pay for itself, and these stories don't either. Anyway, back to 3:27 a.m., Valerie was senior cybersecurity engineer at PhoenixTel, a telecom firm pretending to be Silicon Valley. Open plan office forced fun days, and a kombucha fridge only Kevin from product was authorized to use. She clicked deeper into the logs. No token, no ID, no MFA. Whatever got in walked through walls and didn't even trip the sensors. To anyone else, just noise. But not to her. She tracked the source to a recent cloud deployment, one that her boss Kevin had fast-tracked last month. He said it was disruptive innovation. Valerie called it duct tape on a server rack. She rubbed her eyes and whispered, "What the hell are you?" It wasn't brute force. It wasn't sloppy. It was elegant, embedded, and dangerous. And she just found it, hiding in plain sight. Valerie pulled up the changelog, and there it was, third-party module from a startup called Novalink Systems, a flashy vendor Kevin had been raving about for months. Their logo looked like a sideways battery icon, and their slide deck had more gradients than real documentation. Kevin called it disruptive. Valerie called it marketable junk. Translation. It was cheap, shiny, and just enough to juice his quarterly dashboard. She took a sip of coffee that had been lukewarm since sunrise and opened a fresh OneNote tab. She started typing, "Session fingerprint anomaly, Windows subnet pathing packet flow." She wasn't panicking. She was cataloging, archiving like a botanist, pressing a venomous flower into a field notebook. Controlled, focused, quiet. Her cubicle was behind the second-floor printer, where the carpet was worn down to the subfloor, and the overhead bulb buzzed like a bad memory. She liked it there. It gave her just enough invisibility to think clearly. From that threadbare perch, Valerie began unraveling what would become the biggest security breach PhoenixTel and a certain government agency had ever seen. But at 8:12 a.m. on that Monday, she only knew a ghost had slipped through the system. And no one else had noticed. Valerie didn't leave when her shift ended. By 11:46 p.m., she was still at her desk, lit by the coal blue haze of her monitors and the twitchy flicker of a dying ceiling bulb. Pizza boxes appeared, then vanished. She didn't eat. She was busy proving a ghost had teeth. What she found wasn't a glitch. It was a key, an elegant, invisible skeleton key, baked into the cloud controller. It bypassed all security checks handed over root access and never left a trace. And Kevin. His fingerprints were all over the deployment notes. 3 internal firewalls had been manually disabled. One had a code comment that read, "Temporary, will fix later." She stared at it and whispered, "You idiot." Then opened her secure logbook. It was time to start writing scripture. She recorded everything, screen captures of the exploit in action, showing the system unlock itself like an automatic door. No drama, no commentary, just raw evidence. It was terrifying in its clarity. By 1:30 a.m., Valerie's hands were shaking, not from fear, but from purpose. She wasn't chasing chaos. She was the kind of person who read every clause before clicking, "I agree." But this was her line in the sand. The idea that someone could already be inside, invisible and unchecked, made her stomach twist. She double-checked the report, attached the logs, and added a plain English summary. No alarms, no finger-pointing, just facts. Here's what I found. Here's what it means. Here's how to fix it. She even added a polite intro. Hey, Kevin. Found something strange in last night's traffic logs. Might be worth a closer look. In the back of her mind, she still hoped it would go the way it should. Kevin would review it, escalate it properly, and maybe they'd even patch the hole before anyone got hurt. Maybe she'd get a thank you, a quick shout-out. Hell, a $5 Starbucks card like they gave out when someone corrected a slide deck typo. She wasn't chasing recognition. She just wanted the system to work. Integrity mattered. That was the job. As her cursor hovered over the send button, she felt it an unease, not fear, but that gut instinct that warns you a step isn't safe. She clicked anyway. The email left her outbox at 1:49 a.m. sharp. She leaned back and stretched. Her neck popped. Somewhere downstairs, a vending machine buzzed like it knew something was coming. She told herself she'd done the right thing. But as the hallway lights flickered and silence crept in, she couldn't shake the feeling that the rot had already begun. At 10:07 a.m., Kevin strutted in golf polo and smug energy in full force, humming some Imagine Dragons song like he was about to lead a TED Talk on teamwork. Valerie was already at Kevin's desk, report in hand, highlighted, tabbed, and stacked like legal evidence. She hadn't slept. He smelled like cologne and unearned confidence. Hey, Val, he drawled, slumping into his ergonomic throne like a hero returning from a breakfast burrito battle. What's the fire? I sent you something last night, she said, voice tight. We need to talk. Now? She handed over the report. He glanced at the cover page like it was a Yelp review for a diner he'd never go to, then tossed it onto his desk unopened. Oh, yeah. Skimmed it while brushing my teeth, he said, stretching each word like he was chewing gum. These systems are complicated. It's easy to confuse noise for signal when you're knee-deep in logs. Valerie's jaw tensed. Kevin, this isn't noise. This is a root-level vulnerability, likely embedded in Novalink's module. It grants unrestricted access. He chuckled, the smug kind that made her skin crawl. Come on, Val. That module's already in production. Past all QA. Probably just a ghost artifact from a dev patch. You know how spaghetti gets when you stir it. I'm not stirring spaghetti, she snapped. I'm telling you, the pot's on fire. He waved a hand dismissively. We're heading into Q2 reporting. C-suite's riding high on momentum. We can't afford a scare headline right now. She narrowed her eyes. Did you even read the report? He paused, then gave her that awful, condescending grin. I trust your instincts, but this feels like overreaction. You've always had that detail-focused vibe. Sometimes you gotta zoom out. Trust the architecture. Trust the architecture, she repeated cold. The same architecture you bulldozed through QA to fast-track Novalink's rollout. His grin faltered just a flicker, but it was there. I'm saying drop it, he said, voice harder now. The deployment's done. Clients are happy. The board is happy. Don't stir up anxiety unless you've got a confirmed breach. She stared at him and realized he already knew. Valerie stared at him. So we wait until someone steals federal credentials before we take it seriously. I said drop it, Kevin replied, voice clipped. Silence stretched between them like barbed wire. He adjusted his mousepad. She watched his hands twitchy, uncertain. That's when she knew. This wasn't ignorance. This was self-preservation. He didn't want the problem fixed. He wanted it buried with her career, laid over it like a headstone. I see, she said quietly. If you believe the quiet ones often carry the sharpest truth, hit subscribe because Valerie's story isn't over, and the next chapter is where the real reckoning begins. He gave her a hollow smile. I know you mean well. Just don't make this political, okay? Something inside her turned to stone. Not fear. She was past that. It was disbelief burned into something sharper. Rage not loud, but focused. She picked up her report, slid it back into its folder, and nodded. Thanks for your time, Kevin. He already had his earbuds in, already pretending her warning was just static. Valerie walked out, not defeated, focused. There were still people higher up the food chain, people who hadn't yet decided she was a liability. She gave him 24 hours. Not because she expected him to do the right thing, but to make absolutely sure she was right. She gave him every out. He used each one to smooth his ego into a Patagonia vest. So Thursday morning, 9:13 a.m., she pulled the pin. Her email to Leonard C. Matheson, PhoenixTel's director of IT, was crisp, polite, and loaded like a legal grenade. Hi, Mr. Matheson. I wanted to escalate a security anomaly that I believe merits executive attention, given the level of access involved and the nature of the affected systems. She didn't mention Kevin. No blame, no drama, just facts. She hit send at 9:13 a.m. At 9:14, the reply came back 2 sentences. Thanks for flagging. The issue has been reviewed and assessed as a non-threat. Please coordinate future concerns through your manager to avoid redundant investigations. Kevin was CC'd. And just like that, the floor dropped out beneath her. Valerie stared at her screen, blinking. There was no way, no physical way Matheson had reviewed her 20-page report, watched 3 screen recordings, parsed the logs, and assessed the risk in 60 seconds. He hadn't even opened it. He saw her name, the subject line, and decided she was the threat. That's when it clicked. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't red tape. This was a coordinated dismissal. They were turning her into the problem. Her phone buzzed. Meeting invite, 10:30 a.m., no subject, no agenda, just Kevin and Matheson CC'd. It felt like a tombstone. She paced her cubicle like a trapped animal, running through every scenario. Maybe they'd gaslight her about protocol. Maybe accuse her of overreacting, offer some bogus mental health week. It didn't matter. The decision had already been made. This was theater. At 10:29, she stepped into conference room B, beige walls, no windows, stale air thick with someone's leftover Subway sandwich. They were already there. Kevin was fake casual, sipping his 3rd energy drink. Matheson didn't look up from his phone. Thanks for coming in, Kevin said, chipper like a weather app. Just wanted to touch base about your recent escalation. Valerie folded her arms. You mean the root vulnerability? Matheson finally looked up. What we're addressing is a breach of communication protocol. While we appreciate your passion, bypassing management to raise unfounded concerns causes disruption. Unfounded! Her teeth clenched. You sent a response 60 seconds after receiving a technical report, screen footage, and logs. There's no way you read it. Matheson blinked. Excuse me? Let's not pretend this is about process. You don't want the report read. Kevin laughed weakly. Let's not make this adversarial. You've got great instincts, Valerie, but this kind of lateral action shakes confidence, especially with Q2 projections coming up. And there it was. Not security, not risk, just projections. Matheson nodded in agreement, eyes blank. We're issuing a formal note for insubordination, Matheson said, flat as drywall. This is your verbal warning. It will be documented in your HR file. Valerie's mouth went dry. You're punishing me for reporting a system-wide vulnerability. We're addressing the manner of communication, he repeated. The rage that bloomed in her chest wasn't cinematic. It wasn't some firebrand speech. It was cold, molecular. The clarity of someone watching a slow-motion betrayal. Because in that moment, it hit her. Being right didn't matter. These men weren't protecting the system. They were protecting Q2, and she had just become a threat to their forecasts. She didn't argue, didn't cry. Just stared at them, Kevin with his performative calm and Matheson buried in bureaucracy like it was armor. Then she stood, nodded once, and walked out. But not before glancing up at the security camera in the corner. A silent message to the machine, record this. The email hit her inbox at 8:01 a.m. the next morning. Subject HR check-in urgent. No explanation, no apology, just a calendar invite dressed up like a courtesy. She stared at it for a full minute, already knowing. Nobody gets called to HR for a same-day check-in. That's when the ink is already dry. Conference room D was on the ground floor, wedged between legal and the unclean, gender-neutral restroom. It smelled like dust and expired peppermint hand sanitizer. Waiting inside Marlene from HR lipstick, too dark smile, too soft, and Kevin in Friday jeans, trying to look casual. He failed. "Thanks for coming in," Valerie Marlene began, her voice syrupy and false. "We'd like to have a quick conversation about your role at PhoenixTel." Kevin said nothing, just leaned back, arms folded like he was watching a rerun of a YouTube video he'd starred in. Marlene continued, "Due to the disruptive nature of your recent communications and the negative impact on team cohesion, we've made the difficult decision to terminate your employment, effective immediately." Valerie blinked once. No warnings, no review, just execution dressed in policy. Marlene gave Valerie a look like she just asked if Santa was real. "We're terminating your employment due to the manner in which concerns were raised, not the content. This isn't about your technical skills." Kevin finally spoke, voice smooth as Teflon. "It's about trust, Valerie. We need people who support the team," he added, "not undermine it." Valerie wanted to scream, rip the fluorescent light from the ceiling and smash it across the table. Instead, she stared at the grain of the fake wood desk. Her pulse pounded in her teeth. They weren't just discarding her. They were rewriting the story. Her ethics, her documentation, her warnings, all sanitized into a clean little lie. She was the flaw. "You'll be escorted to collect your belongings," Marlene said gently, like delivering a spell. "We've prepared a severance package contingent on a standard non-disclosure agreement." There it was, the real offer: silence. For sale. Valerie didn't reply, didn't sign. She stood back straight as scaffolding and followed the glassy-eyed security guard to her desk. Her things fit neatly into a single cardboard box. A wrist rest, 4 mechanical pencils, a crumpled coffee punch card, her mug encrypt. Sleep. Repeat. She didn't cry. Crying felt alien. She just moved methodically, like a fire investigator collecting evidence from the blaze she hadn't started. As she was walked toward the exit, a splash of color caught her eye. The new painting, loud, abstract, gold-framed. Valerie remembered overhearing the price, $40,000, commissioned from the CEO's cousin. To inspire innovation. It looked like a migraine had exploded. That was the budget. Not for security, not for protocols, but for wall decor. She turned once, before the glass doors hissed open behind her. Took one final look at the building she'd given 12 years to. It didn't feel like leaving a job. It felt like watching someone you love get quietly suffocated. She didn't go home. She went to the liquor store, bought gas station wine, drank half in the parking lot with the windows down. Her career had just been murdered. The autopsy hadn't even started yet. The next 24 hours oozed by like oil in a storm drain, slow, filthy, and impossible to hold. Valerie sat on her couch, still wearing the same slacks and blouse from the day before. The fabric clung with a mix of sweat sleep and cheap Merlot. Her laptop blinked on the coffee table tabs, multiplying like mold job boards, unfinished cover letters, soulless corporate jargon stacked in lifeless columns. Innovative, strategic, cross-functional. She hated every syllable. The apartment smelled like reheated regret. Her cat Juniper licked itself with Olympic commitment in the corner. The wine bottle lay sideways like a chalk outline. On the TV, finance headlines scrolled from one news anchor to the next, all static in her ears. She didn't register the words, just the rhythm of panic and performance. Around 3 a.m., she drafted a LinkedIn post titled, "Sometimes doing the right thing costs you everything." She deleted it before previewing. It sounded like begging. She wasn't a whistleblower, just unemployed. By noon, she had applied to 17 jobs she didn't want. A SaaS firm in Des Moines. A fintech startup with a kombucha stipend, but no health insurance. A consulting role that paid in equity and impact. Each application felt like pressing a feeder bar for a treat that never came. In the shower, she built imaginary courtrooms in her head. She pictured walking into a boardroom, uninvited, slapping down her report, watching Kevin combust under the weight of her evidence. Then she imagined him getting promoted. A press release. A LinkedIn post with 500 likes. She punched the shower wall once hard, leaving a spiderweb crack. By 4 p.m., she was back under a throw blanket that smelled like last winter. The TV mumbled about unusual internet disruptions affecting federal contractors. Valerie barely heard it, just static under the roar in her own mind. Her inbox blinked. Nothing. Just the exit survey from HR. Would you recommend PhoenixTel to a friend or colleague? She typed, as likely as I'd recommend food poisoning. Then closed the tab without hitting send. Valerie poured herself a shot of the worst whiskey she owned and raised it to no one. The anger had cooled into something heavier, dense, bitter, flammable. She'd followed the rules, documented everything, trusted the chain of command. And the system hadn't just failed her, it chewed her up and spit her out like an expired access token. No calls, no questions, just silence, like she'd never existed. The only sound was the TV's quiet hiss as it shifted segments. Then a ticker crawled across the bottom of the screen. Federal agencies report anomalies in cloud gateways. Source tied to third-party vendor system. She glanced at it for half a second, then looked away. Didn't register. Not yet. She was too busy rage-cuddling her cat in a bathrobe that smelled like regret, mourning a career buried beneath NDA silence, waiting for anyone to remember she used to matter. The phone buzzed at 6:42 a.m., just as she was drooling into the couch cushion, one leg tangled in a blanket, half-eaten granola bar stuck to her thigh. It vibrated against a wine glass, setting off a tiny, pathetic clink. A known number. No caller ID. She almost ignored it, but something in her gut stirred. That old instinct, the one that wakes gazelles just before the lion strikes. She swiped. Hello. The voice was calm, crisp, like someone who didn't need to raise their voice. Miss Knox? She sat up, heart pounding. Yes, this is Evelyn Moore. I sit on the board at PhoenixTel. We have a situation. Silence. Can you tell me exactly what you tried to warn Kevin Halbrook about? Valerie blinked, still groggy heart rocketing into her throat. She didn't answer right away, because in that moment, she realized it wasn't a hallucination. She was in it, and they were calling her back. Miss Knox, the voice repeated firmer now. We need you to speak plainly and quickly. Our largest federal client traced the breach to PhoenixTel's systems, and they asked for you. By name. Valerie's spine turned to steel. The report. They found it. She sprang off the couch, stepping barefoot over cat litter and cold takeout boxes, pressing the phone so hard to her ear it might have fused. I flagged a backdoor vulnerability in the NovaLink module 5 days ago, she said, breath short. It allows unauthorized root access through a masked session layer. Doesn't log properly. Bypasses token authentication entirely. I reported it to Kevin Halbrook. He ignored it. I escalated to Leonard Matheson. He dismissed it in 60 seconds. I was fired the next morning. The line stayed quiet. Then Evelyn's voice returned. We've reviewed your documentation. I've read your logs personally. They match exactly with the breach signature. Valerie nearly collapsed. You're saying? She whispered, voice dry. It's real. Yes, Evelyn confirmed. Everything you outlined is now happening on a federal scale. The Department of Defense is involved, and they want answers. No victory lap, no cheer. Just a low-voltage hum rising in her chest. Rage finally turning into something she could use. Evelyn's voice sharpened. The board was blindsided. We were assured there were no active threats, but your name has surfaced repeatedly. And one inquiry from the Pentagon asked this: why was the only person who understood the threat removed from the equation? Valerie didn't speak. Couldn't. She stared at the TV, the breaking news ticker pulsing like a heartbeat. White House cybersecurity briefing scheduled. PhoenixTel executives under review. And just like that, her humiliation wasn't a scar. It was leverage, Ms. Knox Evelyn said. We're convening an emergency call with the full board and federal officials. We'd like you on that call. In fact, we require it. Valerie smiled. Not warm, not grateful. The kind of smile you give when the people who buried you forgot you were still holding the shovel. No jewelry, just war paint disguised as minimalism. The link Evelyn had sent was titled Emergency Briefing, Priority Clearance, 9:00 a.m. CST. Valerie clicked it at 8:59. The screen filled with faces, 13 tiny windows, each one framed by exhaustion and power. Tom Whitaker, CEO of PhoenixTel, looked like a wax figure dragged out of retirement. Leonard Matheson appeared calm, but damp, like a man trying not to sweat on camera. Kevin Hallbrook sat stiffly in his home office, 10 years older overnight. 2 black tiles remained muted. No names, no faces, federal reps. Valerie didn't speak? Not yet. Evelyn opened the call, her voice sharp and composed. We are joined by Miss Valerie Knox, former senior cybersecurity engineer, terminated last week after attempting to escalate concerns directly linked to the breach now affecting federal infrastructure. This call is being recorded under federal oversight. 1 black tile unmuted. A man's voice. Calm. Measured. Miss Knox, please walk us through the vulnerability you identified. Valerie inhaled, then cut straight through. A masked session layer. Token bypass. No logging. Unvetted third-party module. Novalink pushed live without protocol. She shared her screen, walked them through the same slides she'd sent 5 days ago, the ones no one had opened. Silence followed, not heavy, but electric like static before a lightning strike. Then thank you. That matches the active breach vector exactly. He pivoted. Mr. Whitaker, we have Miss Knox's documentation time-stamped. We also have her HR termination records. Before we proceed, why was the only person who understood the flaw escorted out of the building? Whitaker cleared his throat. There appears to have been a breakdown in internal communication. Stop, said the second black tile, a woman's voice sharp. We're not here for theater. We're here to understand how your internal safeguards failed so completely when written warnings were ignored within 60 seconds by your IT director. All eyes shifted to Matheson. He visibly swallowed. There was no intent to dismiss legitimate concerns, Matheson stammered. We simply, triage based on perceived threat levels. You perceive the exact exploit now crippling federal systems as not worth your time? The woman asked flatly. I didn't have full context. You had a 20-page report, 3 video walkthroughs, and time-stamped log evidence, she replied, her voice like ice. What additional context would you have needed, Mr. Matheson? He muttered something about bandwidth and chain of command. Then it was Kevin's turn. He tried a joke. Big mistake. Well, you know hindsight's 20/20. At the time, we were just laser-focused on Q2 delivery. And Valerie? She's always been passionate. She tends to see red flags, even when Mr. Hallbrook, the man, cut in deadpan. You've appeared on 6 internal memos, pushing Novalink's rollout over your QA team's objections. Would you like us to read them aloud? Kevin froze. The screen caught the precise moment his soul left his body. No, sir, he whispered. Valerie didn't gloat, didn't blink. She just watched. Watched them twist. Watched their denials unravel beneath the weight of her quiet, documented truth. Evelyn's voice returned velvet over steel. Ms. Knox, pending board approval, we'd like to formally invite you to return as subject matter expert to lead remediation and interface directly with our federal partners. Valerie didn't answer immediately. Her eyes lingered on Kevin's video tile. He looked like a man who just realized the executioner had entered the building. The power had shifted, and everyone on that call felt it. 3 days later, Valerie walked into the same conference room where she'd been fired. Only now, it didn't smell like sanitizer and indifference. It smelled like fear. And just beneath that desperation, Tom Whitaker cleared his throat and gestured to the seat across from him. Valerie, thank you for coming in. On behalf of the board, we regret how your concerns were handled. We'd like to extend a formal offer to return with adjusted compensation. She raised a hand. No. He blinked. I'm not coming back as an analyst. We're open to discussion, Tom said cautiously. But we do have compensation bands. I'm not interested in bands, Valerie snapped. I'm interested in control. Evelyn smiled just slightly. Go on. Valerie leaned forward, laying out each term like a blade on the table. 1, I return as Director of System Integrity C-Suite. I report directly to the board, not the CTO, not the CIO. And absolutely not through whatever black hole Matheson left behind. I am the firewall now. 2, my salary is 3 times my original base, plus equity, plus a discretionary budget, no more waiting for 5 approvals to buy a God-tier license. 3, Kevin Hallbrook and Leonard Matheson are out. Publicly, immediately. Call it early retirement, a sabbatical, alien abduction, I don't care. Just make it loud. Tom opened his mouth. She cut him off. 4A company-wide statement acknowledging that I discovered the flaw, reported it, and provided the fix. I don't need applause, but I will not be erased. Silence stretched. Then Evelyn turned to Tom and said, "She gets it." He swallowed, nodded, agreed. By 7:00 p.m., the paperwork was signed. Valerie had a new company bio, active credentials, and a draft press release. By Friday morning, she was back. Same building, same lifeless lobby. But this time, she didn't stop on floor 2. She took the elevator to the top. Corner office, south-facing windows, ergonomic chair that didn't squeak. A nameplate engraved in brushed steel, Valerie Knox, Director of System Integrity. As she passed the front desk, Marlene from HR looked up, visibly startled. Valerie didn't smirk, didn't gloat, but just before turning down the hall, she said quietly, "Save that severance template, Marlene. You might need it." That afternoon, a company-wide email landed. "We welcome Valerie Knox back to PhoenixTel to lead our system remediation efforts." Kevin's photo vanished from Slack. Matheson's email bounced. And Valerie. She sipped coffee from a mug that read, "I warned you." Because vindication isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just code stabilizing 1 heartbeat at a time. On your terms. Always. If you've ever been ignored, underestimated, or told to stay in your lane while the building burned around you, leave me a comment below. I want to hear your story. Because mine, it wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. About standing your ground when it would have been easier to walk away. So if you're watching this with coffee in hand or scars on your back, remember this document. Everything, trust your instincts and never let anyone rewrite your integrity. If this hit close to home, support the story, drop your city in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe.